What if I told you most of us are walking around with complex trauma? Whether we realize it or not, it doesn't always look like war stories or dramatic events. Sometimes it looks like people pleasing, shutting down when we're overwhelmed, or feeling like we're never good enough. That's CPTSD. And understanding it might just change the way you see yourself and everyone around you. My name is Michael Perry, and I'm joined today by Justin Gates, and this is the new Ashla Podcast. Hello and welcome to the new Ashla Podcast. Today, we're diving into CPTSD. Now, this is a term that I never thought I would identify with. And the more I learned about it, the more, not only did I identify with it, but I realized so many people I care about in my life do as well. It's not war stories. It's not these crazy things that happen in our life. It is the accumulation of not just big T trauma, but little t trauma, slowly molding us into different responses to show up in life and to be safe, for lack of a better term. What's your thoughts on this, Justin?
Well, first, what is it? What is CPTSD? I recorded a conversation between Brenda and I. You guys remember Brenda from a few months ago. And we talked about how things have become just buzzwords. And PTSD was one of those. So when people hear this CPTSD, for me, it was kind of new. I kind of understood what it was, but it's not something you hear a lot. So what actually is it? What is the difference between PTSD and CPTSD?
So CPTSD is complex post-traumatic stress disorder. When we look at PTSD, it's usually tied to a single event. Whether you were in the military and you saw a bunch of people get shot, you had that horrible situation in your childhood that was inescapable. PTSD is a single event that traumatizes you. You ruminate on it. It follows you around. It leads to chronic visions of what's happened to you. But when it comes to complex PTSD, this is the accumulation of traumatic events that you never allow yourself to process or work through. And it's something that just builds upon itself. So when I talk about trauma, I'm not just talking about the big things like I said, but it's little things like someone mocking you in school or you losing a close friendship or a bad breakup. It's these accumulation of events that happen in your life that slowly change you as a person. And it starts off where maybe you were bullied in school and it impacted you. It made you feel a little small, but you're starting to push through. Then you get bullied again and you never worked through that past bullying and it makes you feel even smaller. And so with CPTSD, it is the slow accumulation of negative events that slowly shape you as a person where your insecurities define you and you're doing everything you can to have safety. Now, you don't consciously do this. It's not, oh, I'm in a dangerous situation. This is why most of us don't realize we have this, right. At least that do suffer from this. It is this unconscious, constant trying to avoid these situations that have happened in our lives. Different things can trigger this. You got neglect, abusive relationships, bullying, like I said, oppressive situations, whether in a toxic workplace or in a toxic relationship. And symptoms go beyond flashbacks,
Yeah.
You get the emotional flashbacks, hypervigilance. I spent most of my life in hypervigilance, constantly evaluating what could happen in my life that could derail it or cause a poor outcome, I guess you could say. I still struggle with this. This is a lot of the work I do now with myself is constantly evaluating where am I looking for safety? Where am I shrinking myself to avoid consequences from my past? Because often in situations we're projecting our past onto people, circumstances, and we're telling ourselves a story, and often that story is rooted in something in the past.
Yeah. Disassociation is something we were talking about before the show today. Due to the events that happened today, we were talking about this disassociation that so many people are falling into, and it seems to be almost at an epidemic level, because when you sit too long in the void, and this is one of the rare occasions I'll talk about the void as you describe it, there is no possibility there's no potential, there's no possibilities. It's just the void. And it's have you seen the Thunderbolts movie or the new Avengers?
I saw it this week. Good
Okay.
movie.
I just watched it. I just watched it earlier this week, finally, because I'm cheap and I didn't want to go to the movies. Not because I was disassociating, but just because I missed it. You know, it was in the movies and then it was gone. And I didn't get a chance to see it. But Sentry literally becomes a being called the Void. And, you know, he's like, you think that he's like dusting people like from Endgame, but he's sending them to this never-ending loop of, I'll just say, their biggest regret or something, right? Or the most traumatic thing that happened to them. And sometimes for some of the characters, it happened when they were a kid. For others, when they were grown people. But when you're in that void, can you imagine? And I'm using that movie as a perfect example here because it is
a great example for
this. They did a really good job. For anybody who hasn't seen the Thunderbolts yet, go see it. It's on Disney Plus. You know, you can get Disney Plus for like 3 months, like $2 a month or something right now. But anyways, you should see it because they really do a good job of, because here you have a character named Bob who is suffering from some really, really bad mental illness. And, well, they give him superpowers. Probably not a great combination, but because of his state of mind and because of all the traumas he endured, and he was an addict, and he was all these things. Those superpowers, he had two kind of sides. Like one side, he was like this
Superman,
yeah, like a Superman. Except he wasn't like very Boy Scoutish, because that kind of dark side of him really kind of leaked through, and he wore a pretty good mask, but it always kind of leaked through. But his other side was the Void, right, where he is just. And he sends. They don't do a good job of explaining where they're sending him people to when he's like just turning them into shadows everywhere. But they do a good job of showing what's happening to the people when it happens. So, you know, and I have a point to this. I promise. But you know, when I think of like disassociation, which is a symptom of what we're talking about today, is you're really stuck in that most traumatic part, and you're stuck in that biggest regret or biggest trauma, and literally, you know, it never stops. And when they try to stop it, it just keeps going and going and going and going. Yeah. So disassociation for me, out of all these symptoms we listed, that's the most dangerous one. Because if you disassociate for too long, we like to talk about connection and disconnection here, where connection is heaven and disconnection is hell. You sit in that void, that hell, for too long, and you stop having things like empathy for others. You stop having compassion for others or yourself. So I'm
so glad you brought
very
that
dangerous.
Up. That's good.
Yeah, it's very dangerous.
That's a good analogy. I've never thought about dissociation like that, but you're absolutely right. I mean, when we are stuck in our heads, when we live in our heads, it is like replaying that trauma. So often we end up going back to those negative events. I mean, that's what our minds do. It's the negativity bias. We are focused on the negative. And it's so easy to get sucked into that void.
And this is why shadow work is so hard, because we have to face those. You know, going back to the movie, they have to face the things to break out, to go to the next thing. And it is that dramatic sometimes. It really is. A lot of my own early shadow work was horrible. It was hard. So, you know, and it would have been so easy for me to just, you know, put it down and just sit in that room forever and ever and ever in that loop. So, you know, I say all this because I know that, and this is something that Brenda and I brought up. And I know it's going to be weird in the timeline because you're going to hear this before you hear that, but I promise it'll make sense later. You know, buzzwords are what they are. And, you know, we were talking to Gabe, and he didn't like the word PTSD. He didn't like it because of the stigma that has been created around it. And it's just kind of a buzzword now, right? But it's a real thing, and this is a real thing too, and it has dangerous consequences. So, you know, just keep that in mind when we use these words, because, well, number one, our language isn't perfect, and we really only have a few ways to describe something. But
yeah, one thing to touch on with that interview with Gabe is one of the big things he hated was the D in PTSD, and I agree, because sadly, I think far more people have CPTSD than we even realize right now, because life is suffering, as the Buddha said. We will encounter suffering in our life. I don't care who you are, you have been through traumatic events. Again, there's big T trauma and little T trauma, but regardless, there's trauma. And it defines us, especially in early childhood, because often we're helpless or just don't know how to navigate it. And our parents can only do the best they can because they only learned how to navigate it so much. But the D in PTSD is disorder.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the problem with the term disorder is often that comes across as a lifelong illness. It is a
Right.
disorder you carry through life.
Right.
And like we're talking about with the shadow work and working through these things, it does not have to follow you to the grave. It is something you can overcome.
Yeah.
Even PTSD, that's the point of therapy. They go into those events and they help release that emotional charge from that highly traumatic event. And slowly, as the emotional discharge happens, you can start to restore it. And that is shadow work.
Yes.
It's just often it's not as big T trauma. It's all these little things we have to work through and restore.
And this is why it's so very important that we build bridges to these other kind of schools of thought, right?
Yeah.
It's important that we are spiritual, but we are also mindful of the psychological impacts of being a human being. Those aren't separate, because if you separate them, they're not whole, because these things all bleed into one another, right? So, I've had comments and conversations over the years, because I've always come at this whole spirituality thing from a blended perspective. What is of the mind becomes of the spirit. What is of the body becomes both mind and spirit. If your emotional state is troubled, your mind and your body is going to be troubled, because there are bridges to these things. Everything's connected, whether we want to believe it or not. I had somebody reach out to me 2 months ago and to give us feedback, and I never shared this with you because it really wasn't worth sharing. But they were almost offended by the fact that we blend ancient spirituality, modern spirituality, just spirituality in general, with the ideas of psychology. But I had to remind them that psychology was born of philosophy, which is also another bridge. Because when you start looking into philosophy, then you start to see metaphysics, and you start to see the physical sciences start to blend. So anyways, the whole point is that it's important for us to understand the reality of things. Just because the idea of magic, for example, has a bridge to physical science, doesn't make it any less magical.
Right.
Just because spirituality is bridged with psychology, for example, through the art of philosophy, doesn't make it any less spiritual. So,
yeah.
Right? So,
yeah, I mean, the one thing I find fascinating is anyone I know who's gone into this work, shadow work and stuff, even if they wouldn't necessarily call themselves religious, are so much more spiritual at the end of it because of those connections.
Well, it's just like, look, we try to be holistic in everything we do. The path of Ashla is a holistic one. If you try to give one part more energy and more credence and more attention, the whole thing will start to crumble. We must be holistic in our total approach to everything, to life, because that is where truth is. We have to follow the truth. So,
how would you define holistic? I realize we bring up holistic a lot on this podcast. How would you define that for the people listening?
Holistic is simply taking care of the whole, understanding that we are layered. We're not just physical beings. We're not just mental beings. We're not just spiritual beings. We are parts that are together. So we have a physical body, but we also have an energy body. We have a mind, we have a brain, but we also have a mind. We have a heart, but we also have nerves and feelings, right? Without one, we're not complete. So holistic, when people think of the word holistic, they think of medicine mostly. And some of them go right off to thinking, oh, he's talking about that new agey stuff. No, I'm talking about the thing that has been understood about humans for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, is that, you can heal the body but never find the sickness. We see it all the time. You could heal the mind, but the body still has cancer. You can go to a shaman and heal the energy body, but you still break bones. The point is, so the idea in medicine is the holistic approach is to, when you're caring for someone, you care for their body, of course, but you also care for their mind, and you take care of the spiritual needs. And when you have this approach, people do better. People thrive after that. It's like, if I go see a standard doctor, an MD, but I also see a nutritionist, and I also speak to people, and I talk to people about mental stuff, because I'm trying to approach these things from a holistic point of view. So the standard definition of holistic is things characterized by the belief that the parts of something are interconnected and can be explained only by reference to the whole. So literally, the path of Ashla in all its parts is holistic because we build bridges to things. It's not that we're taking things, my favorite parts of this, my favorite parts of that, my favorite parts of that, and just saying, it's good. No, we're literally building bridges to each other, because that's when they're complete, because everything is interconnected, right? So we're talking about CPTSD, and we just talked about some of the symptoms, and some of these symptoms are pretty common, or across lots of different issues. But like I always like to say, these are not flaws in your character, right? These are not signs of weakness. And I'll always hammer that home, because I've known some pretty strong men and women who finally crack at the smallest thing, and then they fall into this deep dark place because they feel like, oh my God, I'm bad, or oh my God, I'm weak. No, you're not. These aren't flaws in your character. These aren't signs of weakness. These are simply survival responses. And at one time in your life somewhere, these things kept you alive. These things kept you going.
And they kept you safe.
Yes. So, I'll give you a few examples. Like hypervigilance. That's something we all know. We all know people that are hypervigilant because we see it, because they are literally stressed out, and they're sitting in a diner, and they're, what's that guy looking at? What's that guy doing? And Heather will get on my case about this, but when the dog goes to the window and she's doing her little whoof, whoof, like she's using her inside voice barking, I go to the window to see what the hell she's looking at. But that's just you trying to stay alert to danger, because it's been on you. And look, none of this matters if it was real or imagined. It doesn't matter, because even if it's real or not, even if it's imagined, it's still real to you, whether I can see it in you or not. So you're staying alert to danger. People pleasing. There may have been a time in your life where you had to kind of turn into this people pleaser because it softened someone's reaction to you, or their anger towards you, or whatever, right?
Yeah, you lived in an unpredictable home.
What's that?
You lived in an unpredictable home.
Yes.
You had to mind your P's and Q's because you didn't know if you were going to get rage that day or not.
Right, exactly. And disassociation gave you to be somewhere where you didn't have to deal with anything for a while. What protected us then, though, is most certainly harming us in some fashion now, right? And we'll get into that. But again, it doesn't mean that we're broken. It means that our nervous system has learned to survive in this kind of overdrive state, right?
Yeah.
And this is part of the things is learning how to live beyond survival, which is something that we seek to do here. We're seeking to push ourselves and each other into thriving.
Yeah. One of my favorite things to look at when it comes to trauma, one of the best ways I can explain this to people, because so many people, I didn't have it that bad, so many people have it worse than me, and it's like trauma is never about what happens to you. It's about how you internalize the events in your life.
It's not a competition.
No, not at all. And so many people want to use that as a way to minimize what they've gone through. There's so many people you hear when they start going into the shadow work and stuff like that who thought they had a really good childhood. And it doesn't mean they didn't.
Right.
But it also doesn't mean nothing didn't happen to them, or that there wasn't a moment that they internalized some negative feedback that then became an agreement within them.
Right. Well, and we've talked about this before, and I believe this to be true. We come to this earth with particular needs, and we don't even know what those are until we're much older sometimes. And people are in their 60s, 70s right now, still not able to figure that out. So we come to this world with a specific set of needs that never get fulfilled. Now, We're not blaming anybody for that. It's just the way it is, unfortunately. Human beings are very complex. We are very, very complex because we have wiring from so long ago that doesn't really match the reality that we live in now. And that's just one of 1,000 things that we deal with as human beings. So, that's why we try to practice things like grace and mercy and try to be empathetic to ourselves and others, because a lot of this stuff that's kind of in the clockwork of our being, and this is individualistic of our being, is stuff that may never be discovered, so or addressed, right? So
right.
You could have a good life and still deal with some of these things. So
yeah. Well, the issue is, so many people wander without awareness. I know for me, I had so much of this stuff bottled up and swept under the rug for most of my adult life, and I would have never known it was there if it wasn't for the fact I had to stop and look at my demons and realize the way I'm showing up in life is conditioned and not authentic.
Yeah.
Which we're going to get into how it shows up in life.
And you know what? We should be grateful for those of us who had these things manifest and force us to heal. I'm grateful for that because it made it aware. It made it a thing that I could label, a thing that I could confront, right?
Yeah.
In scary movies, you have to. I think was it Gabe talking about this? I think it was Gabe. Maybe not. We do so many of these shows that they all start blending together. But when you have a monster or a demon or something in the scary movies, they spend half the movie trying to figure out its name so they can call its name out, right? We're kind of lucky. And I really hate to say it like that, but I hope you guys understand my intent. First, for a lot of us, maybe it's only some of us, I don't know. But anyways, when these things manifest to a point where they become a roadblock, we get to become aware of them because we have to push past that. A lot of people go, like you said, unaware. And they get to, the later years in life, and now they're really struggling because they ran out of time to confront it, or it confronted them when they weren't in a position to deal with it. So there's an axiom that ties into this, to what we're talking about. Confusion distorts reason. When in doubt, do not act. Seek guidance and proceed cautiously. This complex trauma can blur clarity. I say it can, it does. It does. And it makes us doubt ourselves. But when we slow down and we reflect and start to seek help and seek wisdom, we begin to untangle these things through our shadow work, right?
Yeah.
And there's 3 agreements that tie into this. The first one is family, because we're never meant to carry these things alone. And the best healing is communal, right? Grace, obviously. Grace is really important here. Compassion for ourselves while we go through this process. Compassion for others, that when they're going through it, they really need a place to sit for a while sometimes. And although it may be hard to deal with, some worse than others, we have to be graceful. And then, of course, hope. Remembering and knowing that healing is not only possible, right, but it's inevitable when we face things with truth. So again, it's not about being broken, it's about being survivors of survival. Brenda posted something on Facebook today that kind of hit this target. She said something about she was grateful that you survived whatever it is you had to survive, because now you're here today so that we can heal together, type thing. And that kind of hit me right there, because we do need each other, even though we annoy the shit out of each other sometimes.
Yeah, it's the truth though. Without connection, we talk about it often, how we are communal creatures. We need connection, and so many people are in denial about that. Mm-hmm. And one of the most important reasons connection is so important is our peers are our mirrors to our souls. And we need that reflection. We need to because again, our minds have a negativity bias. Our minds are not the best interpreter of the events in our lives or who we are as people. Our connections, though, are. We all struggle to be our own best friend, or at least very often. And when we have connections that we can talk about this stuff with, they can help us see through the fog and get clarity to see ourselves truly for who we are. So,
yeah.
Because we got to constantly move that goalpost.
That's right. So how does it show up in life?
Man, so if you are wondering if this is you, or you might be thinking, nah, I don't think this pertains to me. I think this is the area where it's going to really open your eyes to, if it's impacting you. So the biggest one for me was relationships. Difficulty trusting other people and allowing them to get in to see who you really are, to take that mask off and be authentic. Anxious and avoidant attachment. And for those who don't know what that is, an anxious attachment is where you're constantly needing that reassurance and validation. You send those paragraph-long messages, text messages, and you're clingy, for lack of a better word. And it varies within relationships, but that's a good example of what anxious attachment is. Next to avoidant, which is you're hyper-independent. You're constantly trying to... Go ahead.
This becomes very fragile in relationships when you're dealing with this. You and I are both working with someone that we both love very deeply who falls right into this, what we're talking about today.
Yeah.
And
often that trust is just a projection of the past.
Yes, right. So, I don't take it personal, right? When in this instance, trust is very fragile, not because of who I am, not because of my character, not because of anything about me. It's because of past stuff. And that's what this kind of condition doesn't just live in the past. Wouldn't that be nice if it just died in the past, right? As we grew. Yeah. It follows us to the present. It shapes how we see ourselves, how we relate to others, how we move through the world, literally, how we navigate life. So, and that's, some of these are obvious, like the relationship one. That's a pretty obvious one to see, right? Because this person clings, and that trust is fragile because for fear of being abandoned. Others will push away because they don't want to get hurt again, right?
It's that hyper-independence. I can carry the load. I can help you out, but I'm not going to put any of my burden on you. I'm going to carry everything. I'm going to mask all the pain, all my troubles. I'm going to move through. And I think one of the biggest signs that you are an avoidant attachment style is it's a fear of losing yourself to other people.
Yeah.
Especially relationships.
Well, because that's the thing that sits closest to us. But it goes beyond that. You could work a job where you used to manually write things down. And now all of a sudden, they handed you these little tablets. And now you got to take people's orders from a tablet. And you lose it. You freak out. Because I don't want to change because I like who I am writing things down. Now I got to do this instead. I'm going to lose a piece of myself type of thing.
Yeah. It's a need for control.
But in relationships, where it really hurts is in the intimacy, because it makes intimacy feel like walking a tightrope, right? Because you really long for that connection and that genuine, trustful, loving, unconditional connection, but you fear the cost. You fear what it's going to cost you.
Yeah.
As you said.
Or the pain that can come from being
yourself.
Yeah. A fear of what's going to happen if something goes wrong after you allow yourself to be vulnerable and open and authentic, because you're worried. And this is what we don't realize, especially for those with avoidant attachment. There's a deep-seated fear that when we are truly seen for who we truly are, there's going to be rejection of who that is.
How big of a dent does this make in our self-image?
Are you talking about having this type of issue or having these kind of connections?
Or how it shows up in life? How big of a hit does our self-image take if we're suffering from this kind of condition?
It's huge, because with an anxious attachment, you can't have security without another person. And on the opposite, when you have an avoidant attachment, there's this inability to share your burdens with anyone else, which costs you your health. You might have self-esteem in the sense of I can do anything on my own, right. But it also costs you the self-esteem of being vulnerable, to be seen, to be human. Because so many of us fear being seen for who we truly are.
Yeah. Well, and
there's toxic shame.
Yeah, toxic shame. I'm broken. I'm too broken. I'm not good enough. They're going to discover that I'm not who they thought I was, right? Type of stuff.
Yeah. Well, in toxic shame, I want to do a whole episode on this, because I think CPTSD is almost always coupled with toxic shame. And it can be subtle. It can just be that inner critic in your head that constantly tells you you're not good enough or you can't handle something. And it's this eroding. It's this slow eroding of who you are.
It's relentless.
It attaches itself to every emotion. Yeah.
You're someone who has outbursts. It's always whispering, right?
Yep.
It likes to point out every little thing you do wrong, and it doesn't care to remind you of all the things you're doing right. or the fact that you actually made it this far. Look at where you are, right? So
You know, you're
that really,
self-deprecating.
yeah, well, it really corrodes your identity, and it makes us forget the light. It really, really does. What about at work? How does this impact us at work?
Oh my God. You got everything from perfectionism to procrastination. You know, you want to do everything perfect so that no one can tell you you didn't do a good job or that your work is, man, perfectionism. It is such an insidious thing because we think what we're doing is just trying to set a standard for high quality work when realistically we are just trying to avoid any semblance of criticism or inferiority.
Yeah,
And then you
yeah,
have the procrastination, which, God, does that resonate? Where it's just constantly putting off those big goals, whether that's going back to school or starting that business or going out there and trying to get in the dating scene. You know, procrastination is one of the greatest tell alls because procrastination is secretly that trauma from your past telling you you can't handle it if you were to try.
yeah. And what makes it worse is kind of the conditioning of our society, right? It is, because if you show up as a perfectionist, man, employers love you because you're always trying. You're a go-getter. They use different words to describe how you're hurting yourself, right? Because really, when you're a perfectionist, you have this belief that you have to perform flawlessly in order to keep your job, right? Which equals safety. You're trying to stay safe. Or procrastination when you're freezing in fear or overwhelmed and overcommitting,
Yeah.
saying yes to everything because you're afraid you're gonna you know fall out of that
Abandon or
safety.
rejection.
Yeah, right. So there's also a community impact here, right?
Yeah.
When these things are left unhealed or unspoken about or at least dragged out to the light so we could take a look, these protective strategies that once saved us, like I said, we were surviving. They start to harm others. They start to harm ourselves, but they also come out of us and harm others. Anger and rage and withdrawal, or trying to overly control everything, or even just unplugging emotionally.
Yeah.
That's a big one, especially when you're talking about relationships, because I think we've all can think of at least one relationship in our life, whether that was with family or lovers or friends, where the person just one day just unplugged
Fell off the map.
emotionally.
Yeah.
All right, and it was really damaging. At least for me, it was.
Yeah. No, and I've seen it too. It's so sad because I've been this person where all of a sudden I don't know how to manage life and I just shut down. It's the bare minimum, go to work, come home, make it work because I'm walking on eggshells and cut off every other aspect of my life because I just can't handle the shame and the perspectives that came with dropping the ball so much. When in the end, I was loved, I was cherished,
Mm-hmm.
and the people in my life would have understood what I was going through and been there anyway.
Yeah. The axiom that ties into this, and I love, by the way, I love when you bring up these shows and you bring up these topics because it allows me to see how the axioms work across all the spectrums. It's really beautiful. But this one is agonizing over a situation to resolution provides limited gain and comfort. The price you pay long term for not letting go can be great. So when we hold on to these survival patterns long after the danger has passed, and again, doesn't matter if it's real or perceived, it's still real for the person experiencing it. The cost is our joy, and it costs us our relationships, and really at the end of the day it costs us our freedom to live life fully.
Yeah, you stay small because you know it's safe, but you don't, and you want to push out, break free from it, but you don't know how or why. And it's secretly these hidden things in our past that are just keeping us stuck because we're afraid to address them to move forward. You know, it's like I'm so thankful for the hell I went through for the couple years I did because that hell was. I heard this analogy with grief, and it ties right into this. When we go through trauma, when we have grief, it is like this black ball in a jar, and it grows and grows. If we don't expand that jar, it'll just fill the jar until it breaks.
Mm.
We have to expand the container, our souls, our minds, our bodies. We must expand all of it because the grief never gets smaller. All we can do is become bigger.
Yeah, and look, there's hope here, because what once was your survival, that can be unlearned. You can empty that out of your cup, out of your vessel, and make room for something new.
Transmute it.
Yes, because these patterns are not who we are, right? They're what happened to us. Something happens to us doesn't make it who we are. It's us identifying with that and making that an identity. There's hope here. You can be transformed. You can be, redeemed, as it were.
Yeah, there's always a way out. There's always a way to grow beyond our insecurities and the things that hold us back. We just have to be one, willing to do so, but two, self-accepting the whole way through, because it's that self-deprecation that keeps us stuck. When we're constantly criticizing ourselves every time we step out of our comfort zones and slip and fall, and then we're like, yep, that was a bad idea. That didn't work out. Nah, it's that constant practice. So I think one thing that's important to go over too is understanding the impact it has on us and other people, because we're talking about the signs that you could have this, how it shows up, but what are the ripples that makes?
Well, again, this goes back to being important that we learn to respond and not react. And that's the first step, I think. And it's often the most difficult, because we have to catch these things as they happen. But to do that, we have to be looking for them. And they don't always, like you said earlier, sometimes they're secret, they're hidden. So recognizing the patterns in ourselves and in those who are around all the time allows us to respond, and respond in a different way, in a more healthy way, because it's really easy to rush to judgment, isn't it?
Yeah.
And instead of rushing to judgment, which would be the reaction that most of us would have, because we're human beings and we have our own stuff to deal with, but when we learn to respond, we can meet people with compassion and we can be more empathetic. Now, this doesn't excuse anybody's harmful behavior, but it does reframe it. And so the first step for us when we're dealing with others and ourselves is to learn to reframe some of this, because most often it's just, again, survival playing out in ways that no longer serve us, right?
Well, and I think one thing that's important, if you got people in your life, if you're on this journey and you got people in your life who are on this journey, learning that it's not personal. If you can stop taking things personally, one of the 4 agreements, right? If you can learn to stop taking things personally and just sit there and have a conversation about what's going on, it's amazing what you can find and heal within a simple sitting. I know Allison and I, when we have these moments where we get triggered or we go into our trauma responses, we're able to say, hey, something's going on here. Let's dig into this. And when we dig into it, we can figure out, hey, this is definitely me projecting the past or my insecurities. Let's figure out how to address this and know that there's safety here and that it's okay.
Yeah. Simply just talking about it. Simply using these words, like you just said, my trauma responses. If you said that 6 years ago, people would be like, oh my God, and they'd roll their eyes.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't make it less true. And it's better for us to just confront it.
Yeah.
That was one of the myths we talk about with our show with Gabe. One of the myths was, if we talk about unaliving ourselves, then it just makes people do it more. It's horse crap. If we talk about it and we make it as a truth of this life, then we can better understand it. We can maybe reach people who can see that they're not alone.
Yeah. What I think an important thing to note here is identify trauma responses. Bring up, I'm having a trauma response. Having a trauma response is not an excuse.
That's right.
For poor behavior.
No, it's not.
It is okay to feel anger, but it is your responsibility what you do with that anger.
Right. And on the other side of that, don't sit there and stew in your anger towards yourself either. Emotions are messengers. It's telling you, hey, I'm back. And that's your chance to kind of grab onto it. Right?
Yeah. Treat it with compassion.
Think of it like, your kid's holding a balloon and they let it go, as kids do, and it starts to float away. That's your chance to grab it. And it may get away from you. That's life. But the next time it comes up, the next time you receive the message, try to grab onto it every time so that you can face it, so that you can confront it. And not stew in anger because your balloon went away. So that you can little by little, start to unfold this, unpack this, and take the steps necessary to become aware of it. So, but don't judge yourself for it.
That's the worst thing you can do.
And you know, don't judge others either, because not all of us are healed.
Yeah, most of us aren't.
One way or the other. I took a trauma test not too long ago. I don't know if I talked about this on the show or not.
No.
If I did, I'm sorry. But I took a trauma test a couple weeks ago, and, you know, it came back as little to none anymore. But I started this process a long time ago.
Right.
In ways, I started this process in a way that I didn't even know I was doing that process. I just surrounded myself with healed people, right? So that kind of helped too. So, and this is why I was talking about the bridge between spirituality and psychology, because, you know, they go hand in hand, man. Because a lot of the people I surrounded myself with, or the things I dove into, were spiritual in nature, and they helped heal mental parts of me. So, and I don't say this to brag. Again, I'm just encouraging that there is hope. If a poor wretch like me can figure it out, then there's hope for everyone.
Well, I think that is a really important message. No one is beyond redemption. You know, that is one of our axioms. And it's because it's so true.
You know.
And it's like, but one of the most important things is not only is anyone in our lives beyond redemption, no one is beyond redemption, we are not beyond redemption. So many of us wander through life feeling so broken and so unredeemable. But we got to realize every day is a new day. If you've done something horrible in your past, no matter how bad it is, if you're willing to learn from that situation and grow, you are not beyond redemption. And same goes for traumatic events that have made us just feel helpless. If we feel helpless, we are not beyond redemption. We can get our power back. We can claim it. And it takes time, it takes work, but you can do it. I promise. You know, I talked to Justin about this offline, but it's like back in high school, I suffered horribly with social anxiety to the point that they told me I would probably wind up in a home after getting out of school because I struggled so much with communicating with others. I would mumble, I would be quiet, I would walk around with my head down because I didn't want anyone engaging with me. I thought everyone was judging me. I was one of those, I thought I was helpless cases. But with awareness and realizing, you know, this is how bad this could lead me, it gave me the strength to start working on it. And it didn't start off with big leaps. It started off where I'd go to the mall and talk to 10 random people, just asking them the time. And that was so uncomfortable. It was excruciating, but I practiced. Every day I would go down there and I would practice. And it went from asking the time to having a small conversation. And it grew. And now, you meet me now, you would think I was an extrovert my whole life. When I was one of the biggest introverts you had ever met.
He's one of those guys when you're having a bad day and you go in to get your coffee and drag your sorry behind to work, a job you hate and all this stuff, and he's just so freaking happy and so full of energy. You know, we all know this guy, right? And we think to ourselves, oh, this guy's so happy. Wish he would just not be happy all the time, right? You really are that guy. You know, you light up the room. But this is a perfect segue into this. There's a phrase, hurt people, but healed people, heal people, right? And the more we do our own healing work, we not only change our lives, of course, but we start to break these generational cycles. We break cycles, but really these generational ones that kind of follow our families around too. And we start to be the example for people to see that, yes, you can have safer environments. You can have healthy relationships. There's a couple axioms that tie into this. Approach understanding with light, and darkness will never gain purchase. When we choose to focus on understanding, when we start to reframe this stuff and not take it personally and not try to judge, when we look beneath the surface of this kind of behavior and see the pain that is pushing it and driving it, we allow light to enter that space in between. And we start to build bridges with others, with ourselves. So where there might otherwise be conflict or condemnation, right? And there's another axiom here that I just want to throw, a little bonus axiom. If wounded, heal yourself by healing others.
You know, one of the greatest practices I ever took up was altruism. I would make a goal twice a year. I would go do volunteer work, whether that was working in a soup kitchen, food pantry, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But doing that gave me such a sense of fulfillment and purpose and just this feeling like I was giving back to my community. And it was so powerful.
Yeah. What agreements do you think tie into this segment of the show? There's 3 that come to mind for me.
Say that again. The first part?
Which agreements do you think tie into this? Which of the 12 agreements? And there could be more than one. I got 3. I'm thinking of 3 right now.
The biggest one that's been echoing in my mind when you brought up agreements earlier, courage.
Courage.
It takes courage to face your demons. It takes courage to get out of your comfort zone. It takes courage to say, I'm not where I want to be, and that's okay.
Another one's mercy, right? Choosing forgiveness wherever possible, when we're ready. Sometimes we gotta get there, but when we're ready, and when we do get there, choosing forgiveness, while also holding accountability. It's really important. Another one I can think of is justice, being fair in how we respond. Not reacting, responding. And choosing to see beyond the surface behaviors and actions of people. Again, holding accountability, but also choosing to try and understand. That's where this axiom comes in. Approach understanding with light, and darkness will never gain purchase. And of course, family, right? Remembering that we belong to one another. We are each other's keeper. But we can only do that once we've began the healing journey ourselves. So, and you know, this kind of condition shows us that trauma is never just our burden, because it literally can carry on for generations. We hear about these generational curses. Oftentimes, those are just unhealed stuff that just stacks and stacks and stacks because we pass it on to the next and to the next and to the next.
Yeah.
So this is really where courage comes in. We stand up to those. You know, the black sheeps of the family. We always hear the black sheeps, right? They're often the ones that do that say, you know what, enough is enough. And they begin that journey not just to heal themselves, but to shatter those generational curses. Because it isn't just for us, it touches everything. It impacts everything we touch. So, but it also shows us this, like you said, when we heal, that healing ripples outward too. So it goes all ways. You can ripple out bad things, or you can ripple out things that are good. So because we stop those cycles, right? We can learn to replace shame with compassion and anger for
understanding.
Disconnection with connection and love. Hurt people, yes. But healed people heal people.
Yeah. You know, it's like one of my favorite things to say is, don't force the change you want to see in the world. Become the change you want to see in the world. You can't change people by telling them who to be, or what to do.
Right.
But you can show people what it looks like to live in truth, to live in authenticity, and to conquer your demons. You will inspire others to do the same. That is one thing that has been so profound. I've spent my whole life trying to help people, and I have not had a lot of success there. But you know what has really made a difference in my connections? Just becoming myself and showing people that it's okay.
Yeah. I'm going to give a DC reference here now, because I just watched this movie also this week. I watched The Thunderbolts, and I finally got to watch the new Superman movie. And there is a scene. Have you seen it yet?
No, I want to see it so bad, though.
Okay, this doesn't spoil anything. No spoilers. It's just a conversation that Pa Kent has with Clark during this really horrible part. I won't say horrible part of the movie, but when things are going sideways for old Soups there, okay? And he's struggling with how to respond to everything that's happening. And Pa Kent says to him, listen, parents aren't for telling their children who they're supposed to be. We're here to give you tools to help you make fools of yourselves all on your own. So, you know,
I love that. Oh my
such a great
God.
movie, by the way. Such a great movie. You know, the parts between Paul and Clark, they're very short, very, very quick. But man, they hit like a 10-pound sledgehammer. Because he's right. None of us are here to tell anyone who they are supposed to be. There's axioms for that, right? We're here to give each other space and to give each other tools so that you can choose to make a fool of yourself or become a champion. And oftentimes you make a fool of yourself more times or often enough before you figure it out. So, yeah, when you said that, it just kind of reminded me of that quote that he had. He's having this very touching moment with his son. His son, by the way, who's literally a god and a demigod at least, a small g, right? In this universe, because, I mean, he's Superman, but even Superman struggles. And sometimes Superman needs his dad to tell him, hey, it's not my job to tell you who you are. It's my job to give you the tools to figure out who you are, or at least the space. So,
yep. Beautiful. So
Great
with
movie.
that said, where does healing begin with this? How do we start addressing our trauma? We talked about shadow work a bit. Where can we start to cultivate the healing and the tools to get there?
Awareness is the big one. That's your favorite one. I'm gonna steal your
Yep.
favorite one this time. Awareness, right? You gotta. As I was saying earlier, you gotta begin to witness these things happening and be aware of them, whether they're the emotional cues, or the triggers, or your body cues, right? If you look hard enough and you start to allow yourself to face these things, you'll start seeing these patterns because they're there, they're present. They're often hidden from us, but it's because we try to ignore them. It's like, okay, for another time, we kicked the can down the road too many times.
Yeah.
Something that I had Heather do was make a log. If it's hard for you to remember, and look, sometimes it's not the right time to face these things, right? There's a time and place. Because sometimes if we face these things, depending on how traumatized we are, we might just collapse or fall to the ground or just literally freeze, right? So it's important to try to remember these things. So if you work and these things are happening at work, for example, keep a little log, right? Use a simple little, we'll call it a trigger log, right?
Yeah.
Write down what happened. And this could be just in a few words. Write down what happened.
That's a good practice.
Write down what did I feel in my body and where. What was my reaction? That's the big part. What was my reaction? What was it that I needed? What was I not getting at that moment where I was like raw or whatever, right? So because this is how we start to become aware and we start to learn to respond instead of react. Because look, some of these things will be with us probably forever, right? I mean, I was just saying earlier how I defeated a lot of things through a lot of shadow work, but some of that stuff will never go away from me. I still, it'll always be there, but now, more often than not, I respond instead of react. I still react sometimes, but more often I respond. And again, this goes back to that axiom: approach understanding with light and darkness will never gain purchase. So you got to respect yourself enough to tell the truth to yourself about your experiences. And if there's a lot, start with one, because you're going to miss some, because life goes so fast. And especially when we're out there in the world, everything's at a lightning speed. So just give yourself just get one of them little tablets, right? Those little tiny notebooks, and just
Usually
learn to shorthand stuff. So that's where I would start, is with awareness.
Well, and one thing I got to throw on there. So I love that you brought that exercise up, because it's such a micro way to look at yourself and your daily interactions. For me, I do something on the grander scale. So one of my first things I do with my clients when we start getting into trauma work is I have them make a trauma map. And this is something they don't complete in a day. This is something they'll fill out as they go, because often with the stuff we suppress, we don't remember it all in one setting. But I have them make a map of events in their life that were traumatizing. Anything from as small as I broke my big toe to I had the worst breakup of my life. It's every little trauma they went through. And through that map, I have them then, as we start working through the shadow work, have them go through and look at all the different events that are going on that have happened in the past and how they correlate with how they're behaving now. This event, look how this is reenacting itself now to avoid breaking your toe again. You are now making sure that you wear steel toe shoes every day. And that's a small example, but it's exactly what I'm referring to. So I love that, because that right there, the best thing you can do for awareness is to map it out. And that includes the micromanaging of every time you get triggered, different events, and how you respond. Like, that is so powerful.
Well, it's how you react, because we all react at first until we get that awareness, and then we can learn to respond. The hardest part of this, and the shadow work, the biggest part of shadow work is the leg work, where you have to teach yourself to become aware of these things. Because again, we want to just, I don't want to deal with this right now, but you are dealing with it. You are reacting, and that could affect lots of things in your life. That could affect your relationships, your job status. It could hinder your ability to actually survive.
Yeah.
Because if you can't buy food, if you can't secure shelter because you are constantly under attack, again, whether it's real or imagined, it does not matter. You have to start somewhere. So
the body doesn't know the
aware of
difference.
it and facing it is where we start. Self-regulation is right up your alley. You're like the self-regulation guru around here.
Yeah, no, with self-regulation, I mean, that is what you utilize within that gap of react or respond. Through self-regulation, you can pull yourself out of that trauma response and not act the way you always have in these situations. When you regulate yourself and you bring yourself back to baseline, you clear your mind. You allow yourself to think things through logically instead of emotionally. Because that's what happens when we're triggered. When we're triggered, we are being regressed to that emotional age where that trauma is stuck. That's the best way to look at it. You know, if it was 8 years old when we learned that being angry was what got us what we wanted, when we get angry, we look like an 8-year-old. And that's okay. That's not a judgment. But it's an honest observation of ourselves. Yeah, exactly.
So what are some good self-regulation tools that we can use?
My number one go-to is the pause. And it's much more than just pausing for a second. It is, especially if you're with people you care about, even in the heart of a fight, hey, I need space for a minute. Take that space, breathe. Do the box breathing, 4 seconds in, hold for 4 seconds, breathe out for 4 seconds, then breathe in for 4 seconds. Repeat that process. You'll feel your heart rate go down. Close your eyes. Meditate while you do this. Allow yourself to breathe in peace and breathe out trauma, to breathe out the tension you are feeling. Bring yourself back to baseline. It is so helpful because what happens when we're in a trauma response is our brain starts to shut down and activate. Our amygdala starts firing. The logical part of our brain starts shutting down. And depending on how our trauma responses are is what happens in our brain. But through nervous system regulation, we can activate all the parts of our brain and deactivate the amplification of the parts that aren't going to serve us in this situation.
One that you share a lot is the mental grounding, you know, the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Yeah.
Engaging your senses.
Yeah. You know, see 5 things in the room. What are 4 things that you can hear? What are 3 things that you can smell? 2 things you can touch, 1 thing you can taste. I got that order backwards, but to the point. Bring yourself in the moment.
Everybody does that in a different order, but basically it's the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 that grounds you mentally in the moment, brings you back to the moment. Things like there are lots of different somatic things you can do to reset. You know, the butterfly hug, right? Or just kind of, you know, that gentle shaking, you know.
EFT tapping, that's one of the kind of what you're talking about. EFT tapping is becoming a big thing, you know, tapping on places on your face and just giving yourself affirmation. I am safe. I am okay.
Right. You're providing evidence. Like, look, I'm not bleeding to death. I'm not cut in half.
Yeah.
I'm not humming. I know a lot of people that would, I could tell when they're really overwhelmed because they'll start humming and you just pick whatever your favorite song is. It could be the Itsy Bitsy Spider. I don't care. You know, whatever it is, because that kind of stuff really, really goes to the vagus nerve and it kind of calms it down and brings it back to present. When you're breathing, when you're doing the breathing that Michael was talking about, you know, put your hands on your heart, put pressure, you know, don't be afraid to physically reset yourself because it works. You know, the old hug, if you have somebody that you can get a hug from where they touch the small of your back. I wish Heather was here or somebody was here. But you know, they with one hand they touch the middle of your back and then they hold your head. So you're holding 2 different spots to kind of calm that nerve down too, right? So it's a lot of things we can do for this kind of reset of us physically and mentally. Because again, it's all connected. It's all interconnected.
Yeah.
You can do things for your mind that calms your body. You do things, and when that's not working, then you go to the body and you say, look, we're cool. Everything's cool.
Yeah. Safe connections is another big
connections,
one.
Yeah.
You know, if you have people in your life that are toxic, that put you down, that like to shame you or use you as a scapegoat or someone to just let their anger out, those aren't good connections. You
No.
are who you spend your time with. You
Hurt
want to
people
put
hurt
yourself
people.
around people. Yeah, hurt people hurt people. And the crabs in the bucket, they will bring you back to their level when you start to ascend.
Yeah.
So you,
I love that analogy. Yeah.
it's perfect because
It
I
is.
ran into that when I started this journey. I had people who were just like, hey, no, you want to go party. Hey, no, you want to go do this. And it's like, no, I'm trying to be productive right now. But you
Right.
got to choose people who are safe, people who you feel you can be authentic around. You know, start practicing there with these regulation techniques. I know it sounds and looks goofy. It's not. And the people you love will not judge you for it, especially when
cares?
you're in the heat of those moments. Yeah.
Who cares? Who cares? You know, I mean, their opinions of you doesn't, help you in that moment.
No, not at all.
You have to, again, and you are not what happened to you, but you're also responsible to deal with it because no one else is going to deal with it in that way. They're just not. They're just not. We did a show that I'll point people to. If you haven't heard the show, it was called Choosing Your Inner Circle. That's a show we did about trimming the fat, as it are, building your inner circle, building your village, building your tribe of people that will go out of their way to do these things for you, and they won't go out of their way to hurt you. So, that's probably one of the biggest things, because a lot of us feel stuck with who we're with, because we're taught that blood is everything, but sometimes blood hurts you, and you have to go to the blood of the covenant. The blood of your covenant is thicker than the water of the womb.
There's a reason that saying's been around so long, because it's the truth.
Right. And people get it wrong because they say blood is thicker than water. Yeah, but that makes it seem like the other way. The true quote and the true healing comes from the blood of the covenant. Your chosen family. It could be your family too. But you have to understand that you can choose the people in your life, is the point I'm making. You choose who's in your life. Because we get stuck with that a lot. We get stuck with, oh, well, I'm stuck with these people. No, you're not. No, you are not. And you could, look, they could be good people and you could be a good person, but for some reason you're just not, right?
Yeah.
So
your intuition will know. Just ask yourself, do you feel larger than life after spending time with these people, or do you feel drained afterwards? Do you feel defeated? Just monitor yourself. Your intuition will tell you what people are good for you and who are not. Do they have your best interest in mind, or are they using you?
And again, one more I'll add before you push us along here. Reframing is really, really important, because you have to understand that healing yourself is not fixing a broken person. You are retraining a complex and brilliant nervous system that learned survival and got stuck there. I'm just saying it. I mean, that's just the truth. So, and we relearn this by building safety in ourselves and trust in ourselves and compassion with ourselves. One tiny choice at a time. So
well said.
And the axiom for this is good often comes in its own time. Do not spend time trying to hurry it, for you will only waste time and cause yourself more suffering. So slow and steady. Steady edge.
And just remember, it's not a linear path. There will be good days, there will be bad days. And it's not easy to do shadow work, to do these things. So find someone to help you along this process. We have coaching and counseling services, and there are plenty of other people too. Find someone who can help you along this path, so that you have that mirroring, so that you have these conversations to help you grow and expand beyond your trauma.
And to honor our show with Gabe, I will just put out a gentle reminder. If you're in some kind of acute crisis where it's just too much to bear, reach out. Talk to someone. Call 988 if you need to. Those people will not judge you. I promise you. Those people are angels on this earth. They really are. Because you never have to carry this alone. Because you're not a problem to solve. You are a soul that needs a little shepherding. That's it. I'm a shepherd, and sometimes I need shepherding, Michael.
It's the human condition, right? And that's not a bad thing. It's a beautiful thing. That's how we grow. That's how we expand. That's how we become greater than we could even imagine. It is all within your grasp. You just have to believe it's true and work towards it.
That's where the void becomes the field of potentiality. Is when we start to believe that and remember that, because it is true. We just got to learn to remember. So I'll give you my final words, and you could finish this off. How's that sound?
Sounds good.
So we've spent some time walking through what this is, what CPTSD is. That's a mouthful. How it shows up in our daily lives, how it ripples into relationships and our communities. We've seen how these patterns are not flaws. They are survival responses that we got stuck in. And they had a purpose at one time. They kept us alive. They kept us going. And we've learned that we have to start to name these things, capture them when they're present, because that's the first step to healing. So, and we shared a lot of good resources today too, a lot of good exercises. But again, I will remind you, you are not broken. You are not defined by what was done to you. It's not like you're forever bound to these survival patterns that no longer serve you. You can choose to move beyond them. The axiom of light, no one is beyond redemption. That which is corrupt takes time to reform, and good often comes in its own time. Do not spend time trying to hurry it, for it will only waste time. Because healing is not instant. You're dealing with a long line of things that have just piled on, right? But it is possible. Every breath of awareness, every act of self-compassion, every step toward connection is an act of reclaiming the light in between those spaces that is still there. It's always been there. We just have to learn to remember it and act upon it. So again, as we close, I want you to remember this. Hurt people will hurt people. Yes, healed people heal people. 100%. And your healing isn't just for you. Once you go through the process, once you even start the process, it'll start to open you up and people will notice, and it will change the lives of everyone that you touch within your sphere of influence. So, don't be a prisoner of your past. Knock that prison down and use those bricks to build a bridge to bigger and better things.
Beautifully said. And man, it's just, you see the chaos in the world today. People are trying so hard to fix the world from the outside in. The true way to fix the world, to heal the world, is to heal it from the inside out. Become the example you want to see. Well, shall we jump into our affirmative prayer?
I love it. My favorite part. They're all my favorite. They're all my favorite parts.
I love the whole thing.
I'm actually working on. I'm working on a prayer book for Ashla, and it has been the greatest experience. Everything I've worked on. I'm also working on parables for us, but the book with the prayers. Oh my God, I wish you could feel what I feel when I'm sitting there and I'm typing them up, man. It's good
I can't
stuff.
wait to see it.
I can't wait to show it to you. I've been very tempted. Like I'm like that dad on Christmas. I'm like that dad on December 12th. Like, oh, I want to show him.
You want a present? You want one
right.
of the presents?
I want to show it to you now, but I'm like, no. Hold off. So yeah, let's get into the prayer.
Let us close our eyes. I recognize the divine light lives within me. A light untouched by trauma and unbroken by pain. I affirm that even in the moments I feel shattered, the wholeness of who I am remains. I release the belief that my worth is tied to my wounds. Instead, I embrace the truth that my life is sacred. My body is safe, and my spirit is resilient. I declare that every breath I take is an act of healing. Every boundary I set is an act of love. Every moment I choose compassion over shame. I am rewriting the story of my life. I give thanks for the wisdom my journey has given me. I give thanks for the courage that keeps me moving forward. And I give thanks to the peace that is already blossoming within me. I affirm now I am whole, I am safe. I am free to live fully as myself. And so it is.
So be it, and so it is.
For our affirmations today, I honor the parts of me that keep me safe. I allow compassion to replace shame. Healing is my birthright, and I am worthy of it. And each step I take towards awareness is a step towards freedom. For our exercise today, the guided listener exercise. Sit comfortably with feet on the ground and place one hand on your chest and one on your belly. Take 3 slow, full breaths and notice which hand rises more. Whisper softly to yourself, I am safe in this moment. And repeat that 3 times. Look around the room and name 5 things you can see, then 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and one thing you can taste. Allow yourself to feel the peace of the present moment, the safety in this moment. Then after, journal about it and ask yourself, when I feel triggered, what protective pattern do I notice most? Shutting down? People pleasing? Anger? Being quiet? What might that pattern have been trying to protect me from in the past? And how is it no longer serving me in the present? Then, for those journalers out there who are just wanting to jump into journaling, think of a moment recently when you felt triggered. Do it.
Do it now.
That was a great Palpatine voice.
I know.
Think of a moment recently where you felt triggered, anxious, or shut down. Instead of asking what's wrong with me, ask what is my nervous system trying to protect me from now? Write about the protective pattern that showed up, and then explore what a gentler, safer response could look like.
Learn
if you
to
trusted
respond.
yourself.
Learn to respond, and you will. You got this.
And it takes practice, you know. I got to admit, I've gone through so many different trauma responses I've had to work on, and the key isn't what is the perfect way to handle it now. It is what is the one small step I can take currently to approach this better, because you can't just jump to this new person. You got to meet yourself where you're at. What does the next best step look like in handling these situations? You know, if you're someone who shuts down, is it just saying, hey, I need a moment to get back to baseline? If you're someone who gets angry, is it just being able to pause and say, hey, I'm frustrated right now. Give me some space.
Or I'm angry. Let me go deal with it. Let me go work on it. Call it like it is. Everything needs to come from truth.
Yes. So as a call to action.
How many times did I have to remind you, Michael, it will get better. It will get better. I promise you. I promise you.
Man, there were times I was in those weeds for months at a time.
I know.
But I broke free from them. But you're right. Sometimes I needed that gentle reminder because...
Well, sometimes we got to have somebody mow the weeds around us so we can see that.
That's a good analogy for it.
There is something on the other side. Well, if you've ever seen my backyard, you'll know what I mean. I'm really good at growing tall weeds. It's my Wi-Fi name, and that everybody around me can see. It's tall weeds, because someone called the cops on me one time.
Oh my God, that's great.
Someone called the code enforcement people on me one time. Yeah.
See, anyway. There's no reaction. That's a response right there.
That is a response. I want them to know, yes, I know I got tall weeds. I won't tell you what the password is, though. That might have been a reaction.
It's deal with those weeds, huh?
No, it was much. Yeah, anyways. What's our call to action?
If what we shared today resonates with you, first off, no, you are not alone, and you don't have to keep carrying this weight in silence. Healing begins with one brave step, and that step can start right now. Start by noticing your patterns with curiosity instead of judgment. Share what you're learning with someone you trust, or simply commit to one small act of self-care that says to your nervous system, I am safe, I am worthy, and I am getting better. And in this episode, sparked anything inside you, I invite you to join this journey. Subscribe, share with someone who may need to hear it. And let's build a community of people who are turning wounds into wisdom. Together, we rise.
And I just want to say one thing. Go check out the website. We worked really hard on it, and it's really cool. And the second thing is, Michael and I, and he's just learning this now, but I'm going to try to get Michael and I together at least once or twice a month to just do live hangouts with you guys. So we'll put those out in the socials. We'll put those out in the socials. We'll put those out in any way we can. But I think it'd be really fun to hang out with you guys. I'd love to get to know you and meet you and share with you, because I know there's a lot of things you guys could teach us too.
Yeah, let's do it. Thank you so much for joining us today. With love and gratitude, Ad Lucium.
Ad Lucium.